see.
All right.
Hey, folks.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, just doing a little bit of sharing here.
All right, there it is. Share.
Share 1. Share 2.
Share it in my group.
And there we go.
All right.
Hello, everyone that's just joining. We're just have a little bit of a share-a-thon here before we get started.
Absolutely.
Excuse me for that. Just recovered from bronchitis, so I'm still getting some coughs, but you know.
Yeah, that's no fun.
Nope. But let's see.
Right.
Let's see. I think we're about set. So you ready to roll? Everyone ready to roll?
Ready when you are. Ready when you are, Captain.
Okay, and here we go in 3, 2, 1. And here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Thru Autistic Eyes. I am your host, Christopher Casson, autistic photographer that's just learning more about the world, and I'm taking you guys along with me. So here we have, as tonight's guest, as the name description says, a medium. Welcome, guys, to Patty Horton. I've met through a competition called The Next Impactor, and she's also was on one of my most earliest live streams. So I'm glad that glad I asked her to be able to come back on and share a little bit of wisdom.
Yay! I love sharing wisdom. I'm grateful to be here. So, hi, Nancy. Thank you for having me. Always exciting. I loved being on your early live stream. It was a lot of fun. We had a lot of laughs that day.
Yeah. And also, I believe it was you that helped me actually think of the name Thru Autistic Eyes, actually. So
I think I know, and I love your sizzle reel. That sizzle reel is that's powerful. So that's a really cool sizzle reel.
Yeah, thank you, and also gotta thank Brian Sly for that. From of all the times for me, my mind to go blank. There we go.
I believe he was your teammate, wasn't he?
Yep, but oh boy, I didn't. There we go again, blank. Oh, and hey, Andrea. Hey, guys. I keep missing the scissor reel. How do I see it? Well, you're gonna have to do a little bit of a replay, actually. So
it's a good one. So it's worth the watch for sure. Yeah, it'd be cool to have it on, and where it pops up first thing on your Facebook page.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. That's really cool.
So let's get started, because tonight's subject is more about not just business and entrepreneurship, but involving spirituality and spiritual practice in your business, and how the two can integrate instead of, well, a bit of clashing, so to speak, especially with a little bit of today's climate with how trying to find the right words to say, but
hey, just take your time and let them flow as they will. That's the way that it works. Sometimes our brains have to catch up.
Yeah, especially with this one. For those who are watching for the first time, I have Asperger's syndrome, which is a high functioning autism. So sometimes it takes a little bit for me to translate my thoughts into words here, especially with the English language. So, but yeah, because there's a lot of division. Some can do it very well, and some it ends up being controversial, so to speak, especially when it comes to, people with Christianity, for example, is what's and it kind of has me thinking of how do you approach this when you first started?
Well, my spirituality, I was raised in the Catholic Church, so
Mm,
I give a lot of credence to Catholicism because it was the doorway that introduced me to God, right? And
mm,
so it showed me the way and helped me to understand what faith was. But I was also having these experiences as a young girl. 8 years old was when I had my first, as I can recall anyway, spirit appear in my bedroom.
mm,
So it was from that moment on when that spirit, that dead relative appeared in my bedroom, that my life changed forever. And it was when I knew I was different. It was when my sensitivities gotten more awakened. I was a super sensitive kid, but I was
mm,
sensitive to the energy. I cried a lot. I didn't know why I was crying.
mm,
But it was because I could feel what other people were feeling. I would
mm.
know what people were thinking or feeling about me. And for
So kind of,
me,
like an empath, so to speak.
very,
Or, mm,
very empathic.
mm,
So my empathy, they say empathy is a gift that everybody has, and
mm,
compassion is something that we learn. So empathy is the gift of all human beings, except mine was supercharged because I was not only tapping into my empathy and my empathic gift, I was also tuning into the spirit beings that were around me. And so my life was very intense. My mom
mm.
used to call me Sarah Bernhardt. She'd go,
Sarah
"Oh my God,
Bernhardt.
you're such a Sarah Bernhardt. Why are you always crying?" And so later in life, I really realized why I was crying as a child, because I felt a little isolated, but I really didn't know why. And it was
Mm,
because my sensitivities were peaked. They were on overdrive. They were supercharged. And I, being unaware as a kid, didn't know how to manage them. So I had to maneuver through life in a very unique way, and at times a
mm,
solitary way. So I found myself alone a lot as a child and spending time in my bedroom and painting. So painting was one of my outlets. I
mm,
loved painting, I loved art, and I used to get A's in it. And I could sit in my room for hours and just paint pictures, and just this creative outlet for me helped the energy to dissipate so it wasn't so
mm.
intense. But you probably
Yeah,
get that.
yeah. For me, it was drawing. Actually, I drew a lot, even during classes. Sometimes that little sketching. Sometimes, kind of recently, I'm starting to wonder if it was more of my way of stimming, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. And
So,
the doodling, and so I found myself doing the same thing as you speak about that, and I can really think about it being intensified more in seventh and eighth grade, and especially in high school. So
mm,
there was a lot of that doodling going on, because the older that I got, the stronger my spirituality or my gift became
mm,
present in my life. But I also had my Catholicism to fall back on. I
mm,
just needed to know how to marry both of them. And I believe that they could be married and have a happy existence as long as we understand where they fit into our lives. So
mm,
religion and spirituality are what you would call kissing cousins. That's how I like to look at them.
mm.
They want to walk the same path, but they're very different.
Yeah,
So um,
similar yet different, kind of like branching off paths.
almost definitely. So your religion is very ritualistic. It's going to take you down one path. There's only one way. Don't rock the boat. If you do, if you fall away, you're not Christian enough.
Mm,
And from the spiritual perspective, we're all droplets of God. We're all pieces of God walking around inside of a human body. So
mm,
everybody's light is an amplification of that God source, that God energy, that God light. And everybody
mm,
wants to call God something different, but we all come back here and we live these human lives to exude that portion of ourselves out into the world. So that's where God, as I see God, is in everybody's life, even though some
mm,
people may not believe in God, or they may call God something different. But
mm.
source energy is another word that some people like to refer to God source energy as.
Yeah, in some aspects, that actually kind of reminds me of section of Hinduism called Advaita Vedanta, where it's the non-duality, so to speak, where we think everything is separate, but that's the illusion itself, when we're all actually just like a piece of that one, so to speak. And that kind of reminds me of that one parable I believe I told you last time, the one with the blind men and the elephants, where they were told to asked to describe the elephant. So one goes up to the feeling the ear and saying, "Oh, an elephant is like a fan," and one goes to the tusk and says, "Oh, an elephant is like a spear." The elephant and the elephant tail that another felt is, he says that it's okay, an elephant's like a rope then, and then another one leans against the side and is adamant that an elephant is like a brick wall, and that they all have their experiences aren't false or whatever. It's the conclusions that they only discovered one piece of that whole.
Exactly. And so we could all, like, we'll just use the church just for an example. We could all be sitting in the church, right? And I don't go to church anymore. When I was 13, I told my mom I would make my confirmation and I would do it in honor of her, but I wasn't going back to the church when I was done because it wasn't for me. But if I went back to the church, we could all be sitting in the church and we could all be receiving something different from what we hear, even though in the church, the priest is going to tell you that this parable or this passage only means this. Yet, spiritually, we should all be allowed to take from that passage what it means for ourselves and apply it to our lives, because we're all having different experiences, but we're all gathered in one space. And what we take from those words should be individual to ourselves. And that's what spirituality teaches us. It teaches us how to absorb the words in an individual way as we walk out of the church, or we walk out of the chapel, or we walk off of the pews. We apply those words to ourselves in a very unique way. And that's the way that I think the church would grow or change, because more people would be able to make their own opinions or form their own ideas about what was heard, just like the elephant. And I love that story. And I don't believe you shared that story with me last time, but I love that story. What a beautiful story, because, you know, if I felt the elephant's ear, I might feel the elephant's ear as a blanket that could cover me and keep me warm. You know, when you talk about the elephant's ear, it's like, oh, it could be something soft that I could, or, you know, a place that I could hide behind when I needed shelter. You know, I mean, it's just a really wonderful parable. I love that. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, no problem. I actually got it from it was like a video documentary someone created on YouTube called Samadhi, actually. So it was kind of more of my first step into learning, the spirituality thing, something that's beyond Christianity, so to speak. I want to explore a little bit. So,
well, you know, like
that's kind of my start with it.
Well, Christianity, right? When we're introduced as a child to different things, it becomes a foundation. So it just becomes like the blocks that we put down, because we're going to frame the house as we grow. So all of a sudden, as a child, our parents are going to introduce us to things, whether it's Christianity, or maybe even not believing in God, or maybe believing that nature is the way. Whatever way, they're going to introduce us to what they want to call universal energy, spirituality. It's going to be those building blocks. And then as we grow, we say, you know what, this has fed me enough. Now, where do I need to go to get fed some more? And then all of a sudden, as we grow, we begin to, you know, the foundation is there, and we begin to build the walls. And so when we find ourselves, as we move throughout life, the walls go up, the roof goes on, the door goes on, the windows go on. And then when we outgrow that house, we might build a new house, because we take all of the spiritual things that we've learned from this original house that was built and created as we move throughout our lives, and we take pieces of that as we build our new house. So we never ever truly lose anything that we've learned. I look at them as stepping stones, and the stepping stones are what support us as we move on to the next phase of life, or the next aspect of our spirituality. And spirituality is so all encompassing, and that's why I love it, because for me, the Tao I love Taoism. I love to follow the natural world. I love to go, with the flow. I could sit and watch a tree move and the most beautiful words will flow into my head because in that moment, I'm really listening to how the tree is speaking as the wind, the tree and the leaves give voice to the wind. Right?
Song came out of my head from Pocahontas. See all the colors of the wind.
I've never seen Pocahontas, but I like that.
Yeah, she was talking to grandmother tree, so to speak. So that kind of came up in my head listening to that. And also from the example of the house, that also in some ways is similar to building businesses, so to speak, and entrepreneurship. You start off running the first ends with your first business. It may or may not work out, but if it doesn't, then that becomes the basis towards the new foundation, new business. So did you and of course you own your own business as well, which is Inner Eye Connections. So did you start off with the business idea associated with this gift from the very start, or were there other things beforehand?
I actually had a construction business that I ran for 8 years. So I had my own corporation, but I was always doing my spirituality. Oh, thank you, Nancy. My spirituality was always a part of me. It was never separate from me. So wherever I moved throughout my life, I always had that spiritual aspect of myself percolating to the surface because it was not separate of me. So I really did. I was really in the field of construction and trucking and heavy equipment and all of those things. And my first business was a construction company. And so I moved heavy equipment, I moved dirt, people hired me and used my fleet and those type of things. So that was my very first hand in business, but my spirituality, I was already doing it. I just didn't look at it as a business. And then after I closed the doors to my business is when the inception of my website began. And so I created this website and wanted to start offering classes to teach people about all of the things that I had learned along the way. I knew that there had to be somebody that would benefit from the knowledge that I had gained through all the years that I spent in classroom and workshop and retreat. And so I did all of these things. And so I took all of that knowledge and wisdom and I began creating classes. So I took what I had learned and created something that was unique and individual to myself. So when I began to do my website, I was working in construction. And then in 2016, I got into a very bad car accident, which took me away from my career. And I had injured my back and my neck, and they're both fused now. But that's what really threw me into really focusing more on creating my spirituality, my website as a business for myself, because I couldn't do my job anymore. If I never got injured, I would still be doing them simultaneously. But now my business is what I offer. And so what do? I help people understand who they are on a spiritual level, and I help educate the spiritually curious. So I help them to understand their intuition.
Okay, interesting. So when you first started, were you a little bit nervous or maybe thinking about what others might think? Because I know some people that might be spiritual like yourself, but maybe a bit, a little bit nervous. So was that true for you? And if for anyone else out there that might be thinking of doing something similar, do you have any advice for them?
The first thing I can say is that the first thing that'll stab you in your foot is when you worry too much about what other people think of us. Because throughout my construction career, I worried too much about, I had to worry about what were the men thinking about me, because they were always judging my work. So I had to be 100 times better than they were so that I could stand side by side with them and create this equal footing. But in my spirituality and the spiritual aspect of myself, I never found myself comparing myself to anybody because it just was natural for me. So one thing I can say is don't go looking at what everybody else does. Don't search the internet. Don't look, go to other people's websites. This is just my advice. And say, oh, well, this person's doing that, so I must have to do that because they're doing that and that's successful for them. So it's going to be successful for me. You have to find out who you are as an individual on a spiritual level, and you have to bring that aspect to the fore, and then everything else is cake. Everything else will flow the way that it's supposed to flow. And you know what? You're going to put out some hits and you're going to put out some misses, and you can't let the misses get you down. If you put out a workshop or you put out, a class and it just doesn't feel the way that you wanted it to, or maybe it just bombs and it doesn't get anybody there, you can't let that stop you. You just say, oh, that just wasn't what I was supposed to do. And then you have your backup plan, or you have the next thing that you want to offer. And the next thing that you have to offer, you might have 50 people sitting in your classroom. Yeah. You might have 50 people sitting in your expo or in your your public demonstration. But you have to continue to move forward. If you allow the misses to affect you, you'll never move forward in any business. That goes for business all the way across the board.
Oh, definitely. You just have to think about re-examining of what went well, what didn't go well, and what you can do to improve next time with the lessons learned. Because the only time it truly ever fails is if you decide to throw in the towel.
Right. And say you have a workshop, right? And you have all these big dreams and you're like, oh my goodness, this workshop is just going to be so full. And you show up at the workshop and only 2 people show up. Well, those were the 2 people that were supposed to hear what you had to say. Right. And then the next time you do something else and your mouth is hanging open, you're like, where are all these people coming from? And the room is overflowing with people. And you know that this is what those people were here. They were all supposed to gather because there was a bigger collective that needed to hear what was said tonight. So I always say you show up and you serve those who have taken the time to sit in your group, to sit in your circle, because those 2 people, or even that singular person, or those 5 people are going to walk out the door. And if you've left an imprint in a positive way upon their hearts, they're going to talk about you and they're going to share it with everybody. And your greatest business card, your greatest promotion is word of mouth. Yeah, that's the way that anybody will grow, is through word of mouth. We can do all of the technology things that we want to do, but if you don't show up and the work can't back up what you're offering, then you're not going to move forward in the way that you want to. It's the word of mouth. It's those clientele that'll build your business. Oh, sure. Go ahead.
Yep. Come on. Don't mind the family dog.
Oh, I like dogs.
Come on.
Hi, everybody. He's getting his dog.
Oh, always taking his time, just waiting to come in.
I used to work with this. Hi, Todd.
Hey, Todd.
I used to work with this gentleman, and I used to record my meditation CDs in his studio. And so I would, I'd have my script done, and I'd bring him the music, and so I would sit in the corner, and the microphone would be there, and I'd put the headset on, and I'd listen to the music, and I would begin to speak. And he would say, every time you're in here, he says, because his dog is always so hyper, he says, my dog completely relaxes and is in the most relaxed state ever. And so I always find that funny, because when you say, oh, the family dog, it just reminds me of that story of how our energy influences not only people, but it affects animals as well. So I always think about that little dog. His name was Nike, and he just used to pass out and listen to my voice.
Oh, that's cute. Okay, so yep, Nancy, dogs sense energy.
They do.
They do.
They do sense energy. When my husband started getting seizures in the year that my last dog, Jasmine, had died, just before her 15th birthday, she started getting seizure activity. So my husband got ill and he started having seizures, and my dog, who's never had a seizure in her life, started having numerous seizures, and they had to put her down. But it was really interesting because I really feel she was sensing his energy and it was almost duplicating in her body. So it was very strange to have a human being and then my fur baby both having seizures at the same time. So it was a very, very interesting thing when I think about it today.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So, you talked about using technology with getting CDs for your meditations. Is there anything out? What kind of with the? Hold on, it's coming. It's
Okay.
coming. With the tech landscape always constantly evolving with new things coming up, what kind of opportunities have come about with it that really helped you be able to spread your business and being able to reach many more people?
It's kind of it's just like any business, we have to stay current, right?
Yep.
And so we have to find a way to reach the population. So one way that I've used technology is everything, any event that I ever post, anything that I ever do, even if I have an event link and say we'll use Facebook, for example, and I created a Facebook event. Inside, if you click on the event, you could find my website link and it'll bring you there. But one thing that I always found that was strategic and worked in my favor was to find a powerful sentence about what it was that I was offering and offering the website link above the event itself so they could get to it right away without having to open up the Facebook event and take them right to my website and they could read the same thing there. So it's learning how to combine all the aspects of your business through technology, putting the links to your website whenever you can, commingling them, but knowing how to hold back and when to push forward. So what you do is you kind of watch what's going on, who's reacting, who's not reacting, not being overbearing, not putting your event up every single day, because I find for myself, if I'm following somebody and I'm enjoying their work, but every day, 3 times a day, they're advertising their event, I'm going to tune them out. I'm going to turn them off, and I'm just going to unfollow them for a while because it gets to be too much. So you have to be very strategic in what you're doing so that you don't push people away. But you have to keep your events in the awareness of the people's eyes. It was a couple years ago, maybe 4 years ago. I was at a festival and it was called Theosa Fest. And this gentleman goes, "Oh, hi, Patty." And I'm like, and I'm going, I don't know what his name is. I'm like, so I had to pretend like I knew him because this used to happen on job sites. I'm like, "Oh, hi, how you doing?" And he goes, "Oh, you don't know me." I'm like, "Thank God, because I don't know what your name is." And he says, "You're Facebook famous." And I said, "What does that mean?" He goes, "You know exactly when to put out your face, what to do about it, and to put your information out there in such a strategic way that everybody has started to recognize and know who you were." But I didn't realize that I was doing it in such a strategic way. But he said, "What you've done is very effective." He says, "Because I recognize you, and so do so many other people that are at this festival that you don't even know their name." So when you start getting feedback like that, you know that you're hitting the right numbers. You know that you're hitting the right stride, and it's just not being overbearing, but staying present, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course. And I'm kind of curious, is there a little bit of intuition involved in that? Is there a little bit of, I don't know, I kind of sometimes think of how, especially now recently with using meditation, so to speak, and all these other, something that you usually in the past think of as more of a spiritual practice, and it's being more mainstream. So how is the question was at the tip of my tongue. It's just,
It'll come back.
Yep, it will. Hold on, folks. Just how the integration between your spiritual practice and running your business has evolved and intermingled, so to speak.
Oh, okay. Remember I told you I ran a construction company for 8
Yep.
years? Okay. I'll tell you exactly how it works. So I would go and get the business. I'd work in the field. I'd have to collect the money. I'd meet the general contractors. I was very hands-on in my business. I did all of the billing, everything. So I would go out and find some work. So I would know if I'm to work with this person or I wasn't to work with this person. So my husband and I did this together. And my husband said, we're going to go do this for a gentleman named Chris. And I said, no, we're not. And he said, yes, we are. I know him. He's a friend of mine. And we're going to go do some work for him. I said, no, we're not. I'm telling you, this is a bad idea. And so when he overrode me, his friend ended up costing us, over $6,000 in losses because he never paid us. Right. So my intuition had always been on track. When I had my company, I said, we're going to go get a lowboy. And then everybody in the industry said, what are you going to get a lowboy for? You'll never use it. And I said, oh yeah, watch me. So I went and had my lowboy built up in Indiana, brought it back home. Within 3 weeks' time, I sat down with the owner of Patent Tractor. I told him why he needed to use me, that he had the best 2 drivers in front of him, and that we would be able to move any piece of equipment that he had. So before we left the yard, before we left the lot, and we were on our way out, they called us up and asked us to start making moves. And we worked for them for 3 straight years. And everybody in the industry was floored because they said, how did you do that? I just knew. I just followed my gut. I listened to my hunches on the inside. I knew what I should do and what I shouldn't do. And I allowed that inner knowingness to guide me in my construction business. So it's always been a part of me. And it's just trusting that, sometimes we want to do something, but we know that we shouldn't do it because it's not going to benefit us, but we do it anyway. And then we learn the hard way. So I've always known. And whenever Larry made a decision, and it happened 3 times, finally, he said, I get it now. And so he began to listen to what I had to say. And so we always made the right decisions because of that. So it was really very important.
Yeah, don't always listen to up here. Sometimes you really need to listen to down here, so to speak. Heart, stomach, whatnot, deep within.
And if you can see it in your mind, right? Because your mind becomes the roadmap. So let's talk business, right? Say we want to manifest something in our business. So let's use manifestation, because any successful business is done through manifestation. So in our minds, we see it clearly. And so our mind becomes the roadmap. So say we're going to go on a skiing trip, right? And so I got my roadmap out and I want to go to Michigan. So I know I'm going to go to Michigan, and I know I'm going to go up to Copper Harbor. So I've got my whole route mapped out. So now I have to get into my vehicle, and my vehicle is my heart. So I prepare my vehicle. And so I make sure that my vehicle is packed with all my belongings, all my food, everything that I need. Now I need to go to the gas station and get my fuel, and my fuel are my emotions. So when my emotions are in line with my vehicle, which is my heart, and my heart is in alignment with my mind, which is my roadmap, then I'm in perfect alignment with all things to manifest themselves within the matter of minutes, within a matter of hours, within a matter of days. So that's the alignment that everybody needs to be in when they're trusting their gut. That's what we call perfect alignment, perfect harmony with self, perfect understanding, recognizing those internal nudges are pushing us in the right direction, but everything has to be in harmony. If your feelings are off, one aspect is off, it's going to take you longer to get to Copper Harbor than if you just would have, stayed in alignment. If you just would have put the right kind of gas into your car, for example.
Yeah, I'm just reading the comments here.
I am too.
Yep, Nancy's saying that her dad quickly learned to listen to her mother's intuitions, and he was in construction as well. So hey,
interesting.
A little bit of like a, what's the word I'm looking for?
Synchronicity?
Yep, there we go. Synchronicity right there.
There you go. So in order for us to follow our hunches in our business, we need to be in alignment. To create that magic that we want, we have to have a roadmap in front of us. And everything's created in the mind, because your mind is your most powerful tool. So when you're using the tool that is capable of taking us anywhere in our lives, making any decision, whether it be good, bad, or indifferent, we've set the intent with our mind. So the intention has been set. So even, you ever notice whenever you make a bad choice, it can manifest like that? Because everything's in alignment with that bad choice. For some reason, sometimes when we want to make a bad choice, it's easier for us to make a bad choice than it is to make a choice that's going to benefit us, but it's scary because we're afraid that we might fail.
Yeah, we take the path of least resistance, so to speak, even though it ends up making us miserable anyway, because the big fear of that unknown of, oh, what's going to happen? What if it fails? And thing is, if you live your life in fear, you're not going to get very far in the first place, so why not go for it?
Exactly. Why not go for it? So if you can, if you have that big idea, I always tell people when I'm working with them, write it down. Write down your big idea in your journal. And then, because your ideas, I always say your ideas are the spirit world whispering in your ear. They're reminding you of what your soul came back here to achieve and accomplish. And so when that big idea pops into your mind, write it down and then go back and revisit it. Maybe it comes in the morning, write it down. And the end of the night, you might be sitting there, oh, what was that idea? So then you open up your journal or your piece of paper and you're like, oh yeah, that's the idea. And then you start building on that idea. How do I make this idea come to fruition? How is my intuition leading me to build the road to get there? And so it's all about those ideas. Some of them, we might not do anything with, but as long as we've recorded them, we have the opportunity to revisit them. And so a lot of things that happen with spirituality and business is making a record of what we think of, because in any business, you're going to have an idea on how you want to move forward. It might not be the best idea, or it may be the greatest idea you've ever had, but if you don't revisit it, you'll never know. So I'm always revisiting my ideas. If I hear something in my head, I'll get my journal out and I'll write it down immediately, because they'll start dictating it for me now. They'll dictate a whole class for me. They'll tell me how it's going to be, what I'm supposed to teach, how I'm supposed to go about it. How are the people going to benefit from it? And within a matter of minutes, it'll completely be channeled. And then I'll fine tune it with my logical mind, with my human mind, so that people can understand it in a, what word do I want to use? What do they call it? In layman's terms?
Yeah. Man, I'm just listening to all that. I'm sure some people would love to learn more about your classes with Inner Eye Connections, your business. So how about you talk about the different classes that you offer and how they could really help out?
Okay, so I offer, I know my title says Medium Patty Horton because I am a medium. So medium is multifaceted. So my mediumship, I teach people. The first way that I recognized and understood that I was a medium is I had those experiences as a child, and then I read all the books that I could, and then I met the one and only teacher I sat with in her class for 26 years, even though I went to all different kinds of retreats with other teachers, but she was my home circle, right? And so what Jackie taught me was how to create that channel and making that direct link with your team in the spirit world, because they're here to step forward and help all of us. So when I learned how to create that channel, that's one of the greatest gifts that I find myself giving to people. So I find myself, a lot of my business is around mentoring people and helping them to understand and come into their own spirituality. So they'll fill out a questionnaire, and then through the questionnaire, their gifts will start to pop out. They might have an idea of what they want, but as we sit there, I'll read the questionnaire before the mentorship program starts. And then I'll build a syllabus around what it is that they think that they want to learn and what is showing me more predominantly of their natural gifts that they hold inside of themselves. So what I do is I teach people how to tap into the greatness of their self. I teach them how to not become a carbon copy of me, but understand and recognize who you are. And I help them to find a way to let that light shine. Because my whole thing has always been, I am only the beacon that helps to amplify and ignite the light within you. And so through my years of working in the spiritual field, I have been able to help a lot of people come into their own, whether it's a healer or a medium or a psychic or someone who wants to develop their intuition more strongly, for example. I can help people do all of those things. So I do development circles where people meet weekly, or I offer workshops, I offer weekend retreats. And so it depends on what I'm putting out there to offer the people. A different group of people will gather. So it's just so universal and so broad. I couldn't tell you that I'm only one thing. I'm more than one thing, but the greatest gift that I can give to people is to help them to find the light within themselves so that they can begin to discover who they are on a spiritual aspect. But the other thing is, I always tell people, you have to find one foot and place it in the physical world. So you have to acknowledge your humanness and your life and your house and your job and your car and making money, right? And then the other foot is your spiritual aspect, and it goes on the other path. But they have to walk in harmony. They can't be separate. A foot on each path serves the human being more than if I was leaning too heavily to one or the other. So I help people to find balance in their spirituality and in their everyday life. And so that's another thing that I try to teach people the importance of. A lot of people are like, oh, I'm going to be, let's use medium. I just newly discovered that I'm a medium. I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to go be a medium. And I always tell people, keep your day job. Don't quit your day job, because you have to have a way to support yourself. And so you have to find a way to balance the work. So as you work your spirituality and you work your day job, when your spirituality and the money that you can make supersedes what you can make during your day job, that's the day that you know that you can put that day job to bed. Because sometimes people abandon what they need to do, and then they find themselves sinking in a dark hole and they don't know how to get out of it because they've thrown everything to the wayside. So anybody who wants to be an entrepreneur in any field needs to recognize that you have to grow them side by side. You can't completely abandon one for the other, because you have to find a way to support yourself and put food on the table and pay your bills. So that's just a common sense.
Sounds a bit like Taoism teaching right there with the balancing.
Right, exactly. And so what is life? Life is about finding the natural flow and rhythm of everything. But we can't abandon all that we are and go live in a burlap sack in the woods, because how is that going to serve us? At night, we're going to be cold. We're going to have only a burlap sack. How are we going to feed ourselves? How are we going to create shelter for ourselves? Because we've become off balance and we're leaning too heavily in one direction, and we've forgotten that we're human beings. And so I think spiritually, a lot of people who are seeking this path really need to recognize that your humanness is just as important to recognize as your spiritual heart is.
So we actually have a question from Nancy here saying, I know each medium has their own way that they know a spirit is with them. Do you hear spirits, like see them talking in front of you, or you just hear them in your head?
Okay, well, both. If I'm doing a reading, or I always say, I'm always tuned in, but I'm not turned on. So when I say tuned in, that means that I'm always walking around in an awakened state. So I don't shut anything off. And then I'll feel the nudges of spirit. I might get a goosebump, or I might get a thought in my head, or, there a ringing in my ear, and I'll say, okay, I know somebody's with me, who's with me and what's your message for me? And then I'll start to hear them, and my eyes might go around a room, and then it will land on somebody. And when it lands on that person, the pictures start to come forward into my mind. The spirits can appear next to the person, but it's not like I'm seeing spirits everywhere, because any human being that says that they do, you would be absolutely bonkers, because you wouldn't be able to function in your life. If we walked around and you saw how many people were standing around you or me every day, it would be unnerving, because we wouldn't be able to concentrate on our everyday life. So the spirit world comes in a way and presents themselves during the time of a reading. So I can see them during the time of a reading, but not necessarily all the time. They'll get me more in a voice. Hello, I have a message. Who's there? What do you have to say? And so they'll give me thoughts. So thoughts are the very first way, or the first impression that they get my attention. So my clairaudience, that is a good question.
Yeah, very interesting. I don't believe I ever seen a spirit before, so but who knows? Maybe when I decide to finally get around to joining one of the group gatherings we have, because I remember the one we had the like the photo, the video of that little light orb going past around your ear or something like that?
Seance, yeah.
Yeah.
So in the seance, I was doing trance mediumship. And so when you do trance work, you
Mm,
sit in a state, it's called the altered state. And so what
mm,
happens is that this personality, this person that you see here, it's like I take a vacation. And so all of my internal organs will slow down, my blood pressure will slow down. I
mm,
will be not of my own thought. My breathing will slow down. And then the
mm,
convergence of the spirit world, my team will step forward and they'll utilize my body. And so their mind's energy blends with my mind's energy. And they begin to use my body and my voice to communicate in a present state. So they make their awareness and their presence known through my body. And so things like around my ear, or the spirit shadows that you saw on the wall, and the spirit shadow you saw around my hand in the other photo, they're
mm,
making their presence known. That night was the first night that I captured pictures, and I heard during the week, you need to capture photograph, we will make our presence known. So
mm,
I had a large group. We had over 26 people in there. And one of my friends happened to show up, and I looked at her and said, I would you take photographs for me, just sitting
mm,
in your chair, no flash. And so she took the photographs, and there were more pictures, and there was the evidence appeared in 5 different pictures. So it was really, really amazing. But intuitively, they already told me this is what we
mm,
need to do so that we can make our presence known. Because when you do that trance work, people will tell you, the energy in the room was different. It was the most beautiful experience. This isn't what we were expecting, but that's the spirit world stepping forward. It has nothing to
mm.
do with me. I just offer my body as the tool for them to utilize on that night. So trance work is different. And that's when you saw the light appear around my ear, which was, and if you blew the picture up, Chris, you
Mm.
could actually see a face, a little
A
round face,
face?
that a face right next to my ear, and then it was like an antenna went upwards, and then there was another face in my hair, and it looked like a blossoming flower. It was incredible. It was
Wow.
incredible. But they had told me that
Mm,
that was going to happen, and I trusted it. I listened, and we did it. So
mm.
yeah.
Man, man, it's like all ghost hunters up here, only it's actually happening. So,
Yes, trance work is definitely different. You have to sit for a lot of years in order for the trance state to begin to
mm,
manifest itself through the medium. It takes a lot of dedication and trust in the spirit world, and a trust with your team. And so it's something that people shouldn't enter into lightly. It's not, it's not the natural ability for everybody. And it'll take me about 48 hours to recover,
mm,
because my body is exhausted from the exchange of energy.
mm,
When I come out of the trance state, my mind is blank. It's almost as if I'm empty, and it takes me probably a good 10 minutes to start really coming back into myself to be able to communicate with people, because it's such a heavy experience on my body. But it's the most beautiful experience if you listen to the channeled information that pours through me as the trance medium to the people,
mm,
because the stuff that's said to them and the validation that they give afterward is mind-blowing to me.
mm.
It's just something. So I had saw my first trance medium in 1993.
Mm.
So spirit, yes, Todd,
Yeah,
spirits
Todd's
are.
question, I'm just going to say it right here.
God.
So, Todd is asking, so spirits are constantly around us?
Yeah, spirits are constantly around us. They're always around us because we have a team that works with us. So we have spirit guides and teachers. And as just like in school, when you go from kindergarten to first grade to second grade to third grade and so on, our spirit guides
Mm,
and teachers change with us as we evolve. So as we learn one aspect of ourselves and we have this growth, that spirit guide will step away, and another spirit guide of higher knowledge and wisdom will step forward to work with you as you evolve.
mm,
And that's the way that it works. And just like your kindergarten teacher couldn't teach you about sixth grade, your sixth grade teacher is not going to teach you what your college professor can teach you. And
mm,
so if you can equate it to your human life as going through the stages of school, the same thing happens with the guides and teachers that work with us throughout our lifetime. We're born with a guide that's our constant, a guide that's been with us from birth and will be with us till death. And so we have that one guide that walks with us always and is never far away from us. And so that guide watches us as we go through our evolution. But we have a whole team that comes in and works with us all the time, So if you find yourself doing something new or creative, you know that you have a guide that's working with you on a creative aspect of self, helping you to discover, am I a painter? Am I a drawer? Can I work with color? Is black and white my thing? Do I paint a car? Am I a house painter? Whatever it is creatively, you have those teachers that are standing there with you, pushing you forward because there's something to be gained from that experience. So yeah, we do have spirits around us all the time. It's a wonderful thing.
Interesting, because I only looked into a little bit of spirituality with I've heard all kinds of stuff like empaths, indigo children, and all this other stuff. I don't believe I'm trying to remember if I heard something like this before. But,
Well, the spirit guides and teachers don't get see that's the beauty of Jackie. So Jackie was my teacher, and so whenever you hear about me talk about Miss Jackie, you'll see me about her wisdom sometimes on my Facebook page. You'll hear me reference her often. She was the one who, even though I had been studying my books for 10 years, she's the one who brought all of that book work and helped me to implement what I needed from what I learned from those books into my life. So she helped me to understand and recognize the connection to my guides and teachers. Your guides and teachers are going to approach you in the form of energy. You might feel like, ooh, I need to do this, or, oh, I shouldn't go that way, or, oh, I better call my mother, or, oh my goodness, I'm going to get in trouble at work, or, gosh, something great's going to happen for me today. These are all the impressions from your guides and teachers, nudging those inner workings of yourself, bringing them to the surface, helping you to recognize them. So they work with us side by side. That's why I said earlier, if we could see the guides and teachers of the spirits around us, it would be too overwhelming for the human being to experience. We would never get anything done because the room would be literally filled with spirit. And so that's the beauty of spirit. But if you can recognize their energy, then you can recognize how they're pushing you forward in life, or they're guiding you, or showing you to step through this door, stay away from that door.
And I'm assuming other hints such as angel numbers, for example.
Yeah, like numbers that might come in synchronicity. Why am I seeing these numbers? Why am I seeing these numbers? What is the significance of these numbers? And so there's a thing, my friend, I have a friend, his name is Yuri, and I call him the old wise one. And so he knows how to decode the gematria. I believe that's how you say it. And so it's this Jewish book of numbers that helps you to on a biblical level, how those numbers are significant in your life. So whenever I have some numbers come up to me, I'll always send old wise one a message. Hey, old wise one, such and such numbers are coming up for me. What do you have for me? And he gives you the most beautiful dissertation of what those numbers mean. So, numbers are also connected to numerology. So, how numerically are those numbers affecting you? So there's a reason for everything that we're seeing. So if you see numbers duplicating before you, go and do a little research. Google has a lot of stuff, but go a little deeper if you can, because there's a significance there for sure.
Yeah, and speaking of books, I believe you have an upcoming book. Could you tell us about that?
I do. It's called I Am the Light, and it's the wisdom of Jesus in the 21st century. Now, I've channeled information from Jesus for a long time, for a lot of years. And so one of the earliest recollections I have is in 1994, and it was during a meditation, and it's in the book. And I talk about the way that Jesus appeared to me. And as I was writing the book, I came across this meditation because I was invited somewhere to speak about the teachings of Jesus. And I thought, oh, okay. And so I started looking through all of the information that I had written about Jesus, and the guides and teachers said, it's time to put the book out. And so, and they wanted me to do it for the last 5 years. And so over the last 5 years, Jesus has really made a big impression in my life and come through with wisdom. And the beauty of the book is like the Tao. It doesn't tell you what to think or what to believe. It allows you to come to your own conclusions. That's how it's written. So it's about the wisdom of Jesus over the ages. For over 2,000 years, what Jesus said back 2,000 years ago still applies to today's living. And so it brings it all back into the present. So that's what the book's about. Yeah.
Interesting. So when is this book coming out, and where can we get our copies?
I actually, well, when I got involved with the Next Impactor, I had just sent the book to my editor, and then being in that competition for those first, few months, really the book kind of got put on the back shelf. So as I wrapped up all of my classes, because I'm in the transition of a move, I'm going to spend the next month or two, and I'm going to be working on the edits and sending them back out to editors. So I'm going to say probably the beginning of next year, the book will be out. And it's beautiful. The book cover is beautiful. I am the light. It just is beautiful. And it just says a lot about what was Jesus to everybody. Jesus was the light. And what does the light teach us? The light teaches us how to really come into our own. How do we shine that aspect of God out into the world? What does Jesus teach us? He teaches you the way. What is the way? The way is to unconditional love. So Jesus teaches us people say, oh, he teaches us the way to God, but what does God truly teach us? God truly teaches us about love.
Yeah.
So this book is kind of Taoist a little bit. So you'll enjoy it.
Yeah, interesting. So we're going to take one more question here because we're getting down to the hour, so to speak. But Todd is asking, so do we choose our parents?
Absolutely, we choose our parents. We choose our parents because we choose them for lessons. So before we're born, we get to kind of hover around, and then we find the perfect match for us. It's funny because I'm hearing in my head, it's kind of like Match.com.
Spiritualmatch.com in the other world.
Spiritualmatch.com. So there'll be a mom and a dad, and they give your soul the perfect opportunity to come back here and learn a lesson that will help your soul to evolve. So say, for example, you had to learn the lesson of addiction. You might be born into either, an alcoholic father, and maybe your mom, the mother or the wife, was abused by the alcoholic father. But on a soul level, you had to learn about both of those experiences because in your lives previously, you didn't quite get there. You didn't quite understand or recognize the lesson. So you came back here to overcome addiction. So addiction is one of the hardest things that the soul can overcome. One of the hardest lessons that the soul can overcome and learn from is addiction. So we come back here, and then we learn about, maybe we'll go and struggle with a bit of addiction as we watched our father be an alcoholic, for example. And so maybe we experience alcoholism, but then we realize alcoholism isn't serving us, but he's still living that alcoholic life, right? And so we overcome that alcoholism, and we break and shatter the pattern. And so then we create a new set of circumstances for ourselves. Even though our father might still be there, he became the lesson or the example for us to learn from. But we come back, it's not only for lessons that are hard, it's also for multiple reasons why we choose our parents. But it's always because they give our soul an opportunity to learn on the highest level possible during the lifetime that we incarnate. So, and we've had many lifetimes. So I very much believe in reincarnation. So our soul is more than one life. Yes.
Interesting. So, man, we could just keep going through this on and on. So I feel like we need to have a revisit here in the future. So
I think so. I would love to. There's so much to talk about. Spirituality is so all encompassing. Like I had said, it's not only about one thing. That's why I say, if you're seeking a path of spirituality or spiritual, I call it spiritual. I'm a spiritualpreneur now. So if you're
Spiritpreneur.
a spiritualpreneur. So if you're seeking that spiritual outlet, Me too. You're
Yeah.
welcome. If we're seeking that outlet, we have to find what is it that we can serve the world with?
Mm,
Because I'm serving the world, I'm serving just a tiny portion of the public, right? But there's somebody else that can serve somebody else or another portion of the public, something that I just don't possess during
mm,
this time. So spirituality is so encompassing and so big. There's so many people out there. You just have to find yourself a teacher that you resonate with so that they can help you find your way to place your own feet upon the path.
mm.
And then decide, how do you want to make this a part of your everyday life, whether it's a business or just finding a way to allow your spiritual heart to shine within your everyday life. And that's the best way to be.
And that's the best way to end this, that's for certain. Oh man. So how can they come in contact you and learn more about what you do and of inner eye connection?
Well, I have a Facebook page, and it's called Inner Eye Connections with Medium Patty Horton. So it's my website is Inner Eye Connections. All paths Inner Eye Connections spelled that way lead to me.
Mm,
So if you're looking to find out anything about me, go to my website and check me out. I say if you find a teacher that you're interested in, if they're offering a public demonstration, go and see them, because their public demonstration is going to demonstrate the energy that they have in the world. And that energy is going to either resonate with you or it's not. And
mm,
so what happens is that public demonstration gives you your first connection to that person that you think has something to give to you. And then
mm,
you'll know if you'll make an investment within that person. But that's how they can find me. And then they can find my phone number there, and then my web and my email address and all of those things. Another thing too is, if you want to have a reading with me, communicate with me via email, because I don't want to know anything about your life. I only want to know your name, and I want to set up a time for the reading, because I
mm,
don't want you to tell me anything about you. I want the spirit world to fill you with the information that you need. As they say,
mm,
never feed the medium, because the medium shouldn't have to be fed from you. We should be able to feed you from the spirit world.
mm.
So that's one thing. If you want to call me about classes, that's fine. We can talk about that. But people tend to get on the phone and they want to start telling me about their lives.
Mm.
And so if they want to have a
Yep.
reading with me, it kind of, I, those aspects might be covered during a reading. They might be like, oh, well, I told you that on the phone. That's why I say, I only want your name and your phone number and your date. And then we'll set up the time and we'll have the reading, and then we move forward from there.
Mm.
So
Nice. So I just wanted to thank you again for coming on. I really
Yay.
appreciate this. Yep.
It was so
Yay.
fun, Chris. I just really love to chat with you. I think you have the most amazing energy. I remember the first time I saw you, and we were doing a live because of the Next Impactor,
Yeah.
and you came on, I think it was Mary's live. And I remember seeing your energy, and I knew in that moment that there was something so special about you. There was something so genuine about you. There was just this heart that was so big and wanted to serve the world in such a way, and your creativity just shined and sparkled. I mean, you really truly are a really wonderful, beautiful, amazing person, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to sit here and chat with you, because I could chat with you all day.
Man, same here. There's so many topics in terms of spirituality that's just too larger than the universe.
Yeah, well, we could come, I mean, I have some really cool stories. We could have it, if you ever want to chat again, we could talk about the stories. I can tell
Mm,
you some things that have happened that would blow your mind, and they're really cool because other people will be able to relate to them.
mm.
And so it will really help them to say, oh, I can do that. Oh, I get that. Oh, I'm just like that. Oh my goodness, this happened to me. I think we could have a lot of fun having another conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, so Todd's asking so it could be done all on the phone.
Absolutely, because all I need to do is tap into your energy. I don't need to, I can do it on the phone. I could do it like on a video, I can do it in person, but I've done live readings over the radio. I've done live readings for TV. So it's all about the energy. The energy doesn't lie. So I tune into your soul on an energetic level, and I see where your soul is at spiritually during the time of the reading. And I communicate to you information on a soul level, but I can also communicate with those who have crossed over. So I allow both worlds to collide. I never separate them out, because if your mother has something that she wants to say, I want to give her the opportunity to have something to say, and as well as the spirit guides and teachers during our time together. So it's never separate. It's an all-encompassing reading. So for sure.
Yeah, and thank you so much. And also, for if anyone wants to learn more about Thru Autistic Eyes, there's the Facebook page, Thru Autistic Eyes Official. And of course, there's the YouTube channel where this is also being streamed on. So if you like, subscribe, like, share. And also, coming up in the next day or two, I'm also going to have a Patreon opened up for anyone that would like to help keep this going. So more information on that later. So thank you guys for joining. I really appreciate you guys giving such support for Patty Horton, and I really appreciate it. And you know what? Just for Nancy, let's just relaunch the little intro video, shall we? As a way of closing. So thank you guys, and hope to see you again next time. Take care.
Everyone.